So anybody who's joining on YouTube, we just started discussing the Pesach Seder, and I'm just discussing now the Simonei HaSeder, the rhyme that we have that mentions all of the different steps that we go through during the Pesach Seder, Kadesh, Orchatz, Karpas, Yachatz. And I said that this dates back to the Rishonim, it dates back to Rashi and the Bali Tosfos. Now, once we know that, we have to look at it and we have to see what is the value of it. What are we supposed to learn from it? What are we supposed to gain from this Kadesh Orchatz? If it's written by the Rishonim, it's not just a simple, nice little song for the kids to sing. Obviously, there's something very, very important about it. The first thing that I would point out is that we call I'm going to call it a Seudah, but the Yom Tov meal and gathering that we make Pesach night is called a Seder. Why is it called the Pesach Seder? What does that mean? The word Seder means an order. It's organized. We make a Pesach Seder because this is no ordinary meal. We have a whole host of mitzvahs that we have to perform by the Pesach Seder. We have to drink Dalit Kaisos. We have to eat matzah. We have to eat maror. We have the mitzvah of saying the Hagadah. We have the mitzvah of Hallel. The meal, the Sudas Yom Tov, is one of the mitzvahs of the Seder. Afikaimen. We have a whole plethora of mitzvahs that we have to accomplish by the Seder. Some of them are Daraisa. Some of them are Darabanan. The mitzvah of eating matzah on the first night of Pesach, according to most, is a mitzvah Daraisa. So that's a mitzvah Daraisa that we have to eat matzah. The Dalit Kaisos, the 4 cups of wine, that's a mitzvah Darabanan. But we have a whole host of mitzvahs. And we don't perform those mitzvahs in a helter-skelter fashion. We perform those mitzvahs in a very structured manner. And that's why it's called a Seder, because there's an order in which the mitzvahs are supposed to be performed. The first thing that we do when we sit down to the Seder is we have to make Kaddish. And Kaddish, even though we make Kaddish every Friday night, and we always make Kaddish on Yom Tov, but the Kaddish of the Pesach Seder is not even a regular Kaddish. It's also the mitzvah of the first kais. The first one of the Dalit Kaisos is the kais of Kaddish. So that's the first mitzvah we do. That's Kadesh. Then we have Orchatz. We have to wash, and then we have to eat the Karpas. Everything is organized. Somebody is not supposed to sit down by the Seder and decide, you know what, I know that I have to drink Dalit Kaisos. Okay, fine, bring me 4 cups of wine. I'll pour out 4 cups, I'll make a bar priagafen, and I'll drink 4 cups of wine. I'm not going to get into the halachic specifics of whether or not you would be yotzei the mitzvah of Dalit Kaisos or not, but this much is for sure. We're not supposed to do it that way. Each one of the Kaisos was set upon another part of the Seder. The first kais is over Kiddush. The second kais is over the Hagadah. The third kais is over benching. The fourth kais is over Hallel. So each one of the 4 kaisos is over another one of the mitzvahs of the night. So everything is very structured. It's very organized. And we're not sitting down and just doing whatever we want. What we're doing is we're sitting down and we're following the Mesorah that we have from the Chazal. That's what we're doing. That's why it's a Pesach Seder. And that's why the Rishonim gave us Simonim. The Rishonim gave us this Kaddish, Orchas, Karpas, Yachatz, so that we should understand that there's a structure to the night. There's a prescribed fashion in how things are supposed to be done. Now, that's not only because the mitzvahs of the night are supposed to be done in a structured way. I think there's another reason as well. Maybe another 2 reasons at least. Imagine if you were going to a royal event. Imagine if you were going, lahavdil, to Buckingham Palace. You were invited to a state dinner in Buckingham Palace and the queen is going to be there, and maybe the cabinet and the government officials are going to be there, and this is it's a state event. This is not a simple meal. You know that there's going to be a protocol. You know that it's going to be very structured. I believe the queen doesn't come into the room until everybody else is in the room. As a matter of fact, once the queen comes in, nobody else can come in. So if you're late to an event where the queen is in attendance, you're out of luck. Because once the queen comes in, that's it. The door's closed. Nobody else can come in anymore. Now, they can't have it the other way. They can't have that the queen comes in first and then everybody else comes in, because that means that the queen is sitting and waiting for people. The queen doesn't wait for people. So everybody comes in, and then when everything is ready, the queen comes in and everything starts. If somebody else would come in after the queen, now that means that the queen wasn't the most chashuv a person in the room. Now the next person who comes in is more chashuv than the queen, because the queen had to wait for her. So there is a royal protocol, and there's an etiquette, and the table is going to be set. I'm sure that the royal butlers, or whatever they call them in Buckingham Palace, I'm sure that they have a book all about what size fork goes where, and which spoon goes where, and which plate goes where. And heaven help the person who sets the table and sets the table wrong. I'm sure he'll be looking for a new job. Why? Why? Why does it have to be that way? Why can't it be helter-skelter? Why can't it be come in whenever you want? Why can't it be? We'll put the cutlery down in the middle of the table. You know, it's like when you go to certain very not formal events, so they'll put a cup of forks and a cup of spoons and a cup of knives. And if you need a spoon, you'll take a spoon. If you need a fork, you'll take a fork. Why do we have to have all of this pomp and ceremony? The reason we have the pomp and ceremony is because when something is chashuv, when something is important, when something is royal, then we have everything has to be done in a very specific, very precise manner. I always say it's one of my favorite speeches that I give by a Sheva Brachas. I always say by a Sheva Brachas, I say to the Chassid and the Kala, you're going to hear during the whole Sheva Brachas, you're going to hear again and again and again and again, everybody's going to tell you, Ish v'isha shchina shruya beineim. When a man and a wife get together, the shchina, the divine presence, if they're zoicha, the divine presence joins them. If they're not zoicha, if they don't merit it, then chas v'shalom, instead of the shchina, they'll have eish, they'll have fire. Why? Where does that come from? Because ish, man, is aleph yud shin. So ish has a yud in between the aleph and the shin. Isha has a hey. Isha is aleph shin hey. So the woman has a hey. Yud from ish and hey from isha spells Hashem's name of ka. So ish v'isha, when you join man and woman, if they merit it, if they live the right way, then you take the yud, you take the hey, and the shchina is shruya b'saycham. The divine presence joins them. If they don't merit it, then you take away the yud from ish, and you take away the hey from isha, and what you're left with is ish. You're left with fire. So people say constantly to the chassan and the kala, ish v'isha shchina shruya beineim. So I always tell them, yes, it's true. Ish v'isha shchina shruya beineim. But you don't get the shchina without work. If you want to know what it takes to get the shchina, take a look at the Beis HaMikdash. If you learn Masechtas Tamid, and you learn Masechtas Shkolim, and you learn Masechtas Yuma, and you learn Kachim, you'll see that everything in the Beis HaMikdash was done with tremendous precision. Everything was done with tremendous precision. If you brought a carbon oila, then the carbon had to be slaughtered on the north of the Mizbeach. If you slaughtered it somewhere else, it's not kosher. You slaughtered it in the wrong place. Oh, come on, what's the difference? What's the difference if I slit the throat of the animal over here, or I slit the throat of the animal over there? No, there's a difference. A carbon oila, shchitasai batzafain. You have to slaughter it in the north. A carbon mincha, when you have the bowl of the flour and the oil and the levina, you have to bring it to the mizbeach. It needs hagasha el mizbeach. You have to bring it to the mizbeach. There's a specific corner that you have to bring it to. You have to bring it to the southwest corner of the mizbeach. If you bring it to the northeast corner of the Mizbeach, you didn't do the Avodah right. You passed the Avodah. If you're bringing a carbon that's a bird, so then it has to be slaughtered up on near the top of the Mizbeach, on a specific side of the Mizbeach. You do it wrong, you blew it. The matanos of the damim, where you have to sprinkle the blood. Every carbon has to be done in a specific manner. And if you do it wrong, very often you ruin the carbon. The carbon is useless. It's not effective. So not only that, everything was done with tremendous precision. On Yom Kippur, when the Avodah was done by the Kohen Gadol, exactly where he was tovel in the mikveh, which mikveh he used, and how he walked to get to the mikveh was precision. Everything was precise in the Beis HaMikdash. You're dealing with the Shechina. When you're dealing with the Shechina, everything has to be precise. You know, if somebody is in a hospital, if you have a neurosurgeon that's in the OR, everything has to be done with precision. If the neurosurgeon asks the nurse for a specific size scalpel or a specific type of suture or a specific type of tool, and the nurse just sticks her hand in the thing, what's the difference? This one, that one, the other one. No, there's no such thing. You're going to kill the patient. In a half a second, you're going to kill the patient. So it depends what you're doing. If you're cutting chicken for your chicken soup, it doesn't matter if you use a serrated knife, a non-serrated knife, a big knife, or a small knife. What's the difference? As I like to make a joke. How do you have, you have surgeons, and then you have specialists, and then you have regular doctors, and then you have veterinarians, and then you have pathologists. So I always say you have 5 guys that went to medical school. They all wanted to be doctors. So the guy who was really talented and the guy who was really bright, he ended up being the neurosurgeon. A guy who wasn't as bright, so okay, he ended up being some kind of specialist. A guy who was the next tier down, he ended up being a regular general practitioner. And the guy who didn't make the cut, he also went into medicine, but then maybe he became a veterinarian. He works on the dogs instead of the people. Then you have a guy who just wasn't talented at all. He's the one who does the autopsies. So it depends. But when you're dealing with something that's really chashuv, you need precision. When we sit down to the Pesach Seder, we need precision. Now, another lesson in this Seder. The truth is that this is a lesson that applies to Torah life throughout the year. And that is something that Rav Moshe Zechet Tzaddik V'Kadosh Livracha was very big on. And that is that a person in his life has to be mesuder. He has to be organized. What do I mean that he has to be organized? I don't mean necessarily that his bills and his paperwork have to be super organized. I don't mean that he has to have a calendar and a planner and he has to have very neatly written down when all of his appointments are. That might be a wonderful thing, but that's not what I mean. What I mean is that in Torah life, a person is always supposed to know what he should be doing at any given moment. And there's a very important reason for that. If a person does not know, if a person doesn't have a plan, if a person doesn't know what he should be doing at any given time, then you end up wasting time. Because you hit a time during the day, I don't know what I should do now. So what happens? You do nothing. Because I have time to waste. The Rishiva Zatzal used to get very, very, very upset when he would hear people say the English saying, let's go kill some time. The Rishiva Zatzal used to say, Mahaget Zeit, Mahaget nicht Zeit, Mahaget avek Menschen. We're not killing time, we're killing people. All a person is the sum total of the minutes that he has in his life. So when you lose minutes, you lose life. That's what you're losing. So if a person knows what he should be doing, so then he finishes doing one thing, and he transfers very, very easily over to the next thing. He knows what he should be doing now. So if a person knows when he daven shachris. So one of the reasons why kavua, a makom kavua, to know where you sit in shul. Why is it so important to have a makom kavua? It's important to have a makom kavua, and most people don't know, not only is it in the Indian to have a makom kavua, but a person is really supposed to daven as much as he can at the same time. A person is supposed to have a minyan kavua. Why is that important? Because if a person knows that he davens at the 7 o'clock minyan, so that every day he gets up for the 7 o'clock minyan. If a person's life is helter-skelter, and one day he davens v'sikin, one day he davens at the 7:20, one day he davens at the 8, one day he davens at the 8:30, and one day he davens at the 8:45, then there's nothing making him get up in the morning at a specific time. So if one day he wants to sleep in, he'll sleep in. He'll daven at 8:45. But if a person knows that he davens 7 o'clock every day, so then he's Masuder. So he gets up at 6:30. He gets up 6:15. He gets up. If he knows that he has a Seder to learn 2 Mishnayos before davening, so he gets up early to learn his 2 Mishnayos. And then he goes and he davens Shachris. And then after Shachris, he knows what he's doing next. So the inyan of Seder in a Torah life is very important because it makes a person make the most out of life. So that's another lesson from Kaddish Urchatz Karpas Yachatz. Just the concept that there should be Seder. Another thing we could learn from Kaddish Urchatz Karpas Yachatz. Did you ever wonder, when it comes to benching, so we know that when we have 3 people, we bench with the Mizumin. What does the word Mizumin mean? So I think a lot of us use the word Mizumin in another context. When they want to pay somebody or they want to get money for something, they say, do you have any Mizumin? Mizumin is cash. Why is Mizumin cash? What's the word Mizumin? Mizumin means prepared. Cash is prepared. It could be spent immediately. It's liquid. If you got cash, you could turn around right away and go into a store and buy a coffee. If you get a check, you can't buy a coffee. You might have $1,000 check in your hand, but you can't buy a coffee because you can't pay. You can't walk into the establishment and give them $1,000 check and get change for a coffee. But if you have cash, you can take $1. You can go buy a coffee. Mizumin means prepared. When we bench with a Mizumin, what's the first thing that the one who's benching says? So if we're talking Yiddish, he says, Rabbi Sai Mivelen benchen. He says, Rabbi Sai, we're going to bench. If it's in Hebrew, Rabbatai Nivarech means the same thing. Rabbi Sai, let's bench. Why do we need this statement? Everybody knows that we're benching. Why can't we just start with the next part? Yihi Shem Hashem Mevarach, Me'ata Ve'adolam. Well, why do we have to start Rabbi Sai Mivelen benchen? Why do we have to say that? Because the reason it's called Zimun is what we're doing is we're calling everybody together to bench, and that's a preparation for benching. Let's remember that in the Torah HaKadosh, and when it comes to the performance of mitzvahs, hazmana, preparation, is a very, very important thing. We're supposed to, I'm saying Shiur right now in Mishnah Berurah. I'm saying Shiur on Hilchas Tainus, the laws of a Tainus, the laws of a fast day. And there's a very, very complicated siman in Shulchan Aruch. It took me by surprise how complicated this siman is. It's a siman in Shulchan Aruch that discusses a body of law that most of us have nothing to do with. And that is the halachas of Kabbalas HaTainus, the halachas of accepting a tainus upon yourself. We generally don't deal with Kabbalas HaTainus because the 4 main fast days that we have on the calendar, the Tainus Tzibur, we have Asar B'Tevis, Tainus Esther, Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, Tisha B'Av, Tzom Gedalia. Those fast days don't require a Kabbalas HaTainus. We don't have to accept the tainus upon ourselves because the tainus is considered mekubal va'omid. Since Klal Yisrael as a whole all decided that we fast these fast days, so it's already, the fast is considered accepted upon ourselves without a formal declaration of an acceptance of a Kabbalas HaTainus. But let's say somebody wants to make his own personal tainus. Somebody wants to fast. Let's say somebody never did an Avera, and he wants to get a kapara, and one of the ways, the Sfarim say, one of the ways to get a kapara for an Avera is to fast. So a person wants to make a personal fast day. A personal fast day is not considered a valid tainus in halacha unless you make a Kabbalas HaTainus. You have to accept the tainus upon yourself by mincha the day before the tainus. So if you want to fast on Tuesday, Monday by mincha, either in your Shemona Esrei by Shemaya Tefillah, or after Shemona Esrei, after Hamavarech Esam Yisrael Bashalom, you have to say, Hareini betainis yachid lamachar. I'm going to have a tainis yachid, a tainis for an individual tomorrow. Yehi Ratzain, it should be the will of Hashem. I think, shetekabel ta'anisi utfilasi. My tainis and my tfilas, my prayers, should be accepted. So you need a Kabbalah Satainis. Now, the halachas of Kabbalah Satainis, it turns out, are very complex. When you do it, how you do it, when it's valid, when it's not valid. What is it based on? Where does it come from that we need a Kabbalah Satainis? So it comes from a pasuk. The pasuk in Yoel says, Kadju Tzoim. You have to be Mekadesh, a fast. What does it mean to be Mekadesh it, to sanctify it? It means that you need Hazmana. You're not going to get kaparas avonos. You're not going to get forgiveness for an avera that you did just by virtue of the fact that you don't eat on Tuesday and you don't pay any attention to it and you even forget that you're not eating and you come home and you tell your wife, boy, I'm really hungry today. And then you say, oh yeah, you know why I'm hungry? I fasted the whole day. That's a fast that's going to get you kaparas avonos. That's not a fast that's worth anything. In order for the fast to be worth something, you have to pay attention to it. So the first thing you have to do is you have to do Kadju Tzoim. Before you go into the fast, you have to make a formal declaration of preparation. I'm accepting a fast upon myself tomorrow. What does that mean? That means I'm going to fast L'Shem Shamayim. It means that I'm going to be mispal to the Rebbeinu Shalom. It's the same thing by every davar shebekdusha. Every time we do a mitzvah, we're supposed to be mekadesh ourselves. We're supposed to prepare ourselves. Before we bench, we don't just sit down and mumble off benching. We say, Rabbi Sai Mevelen benchen. Rabbi Sai, let's sit down and let's bench. Let's prepare ourselves to bench. It's not just boom. No, we need a minute of preparation. You come to daven, really, it says that the Hasidim HaRishonim used to spend 3 hours preparing before they davened. They say over from Klosterberg Rebbe that once he walked to shul to go to daven. He got to the steps. He turned around. He went back home. He sat down at home for a minute. Then he got up and he walked to shul again. They asked him what happened. He said he wasn't making himself. He didn't make hachanas. He didn't prepare himself for davening adequately. So he had to go back and sit down and prepare himself for davening. So when we come to the Seder, where we're going to perform all of these mitzvahs, we can't just sit down and start knocking off mitzvahs. We need hazmana. We need to prepare. And that's why every step of the way by the Seder, we make an announcement. We don't just sit down and make Kaddish. We say, Kadesh. Kadesh. What's Kadesh? Okay, we're going to sit down. We're going to make Kaddish. And we're going to be Mekayim, the mitzvah of drinking the first one of the Dalet Kaisos. So we have to have a head on our shoulders. We have to pay attention to what we're doing. And we have to prepare for it. And we have to think about it. We have to have intent. Wow, I bet you didn't realize that there was so much in Kaddish, Urchatz, Karpas, Yachatz. And by the way, I could keep going. I don't have to stop here. I could keep going on just the Simonei HaSeder. We could keep going and keep talking about it. But let's go a little further. What's the first one of the Simonim? Kadesh. Okay, what's Kadesh? So you turn to your child by the table. You say, tell me what's Kaddish. He says, Tati comes home, he puts on the kittel, he comes to the Seder, he takes a kais and he makes Kiddush, and we drink the first one of the Dalet Kaisos. Okay, notice that the siman is not Kiddush, it's Kadesh. Kadesh is, I think, a call to action. Kadesh, be Mekadesh. It's not just we're announcing Kiddush, we're telling you you have to be Mekadesh. When you sit down to make Kiddush, you have to set the tone for the Seder. What is Kiddush? I'm sanctifying. Every Friday night when we sit down and we make Kiddush, What we're doing is we're saying this is no ordinary meal. This is not an ordinary family supper. This is a Shabbos Suda. I make Kiddush alayayin. I say Vayichulu Hashamayim v'ha'aretz v'chol tzavam. I speak about the Rabbeinu Shalom creating the world, Sheishis Yimei Bereshis. I speak about Yetzias Mitzrayim. And that's why we're having a Suda on Friday night, because it's a Shabbos Suda. So by making Kiddush, I'm Mekadesh the Suda. When we make Kiddush by the Seder, we're being Mekadesh the Seder. We're announcing what it is that we're doing over here. We're saying that what we're doing is Asher Bachar Banu Mikalam V'Roimamanu Mikalashain. We're saying that the Rabbeinu Shalom chose us from all the nations. Why do I have a Pesach Seder? I have a Pesach Seder Asher Bachar Banu Mikalam because I'm a member of a Mamleches Kayanim V'Goy Kadesh, because I'm a Yid, because I'm a treasured nation of the Rabbeinu Shalom. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing tonight. You want to know why I'm going to eat matzah? You want to know why I'm going to eat maror? You want to know why I'm staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning, doing all of these mitzvahs and running ourselves ragged and everything else and being so involved and singing all the songs and everything else? I'll tell you why. Asher Bachar Banu Mikalam V'Raimamanu Mikalashain V'Kiddishanu B'Mitzvaysav. Because the Rabbeinu Shalom is Mekadesh me. He sanctifies me by giving me mitzvahs to do and to perform. And that makes me a holy person. And I only have these mitzvahs because the Rabbeinu Shalom took me from all the nations. So Kadesh is a call to action. Kadesh is make Kiddush and set the tone for the night. Let everybody around the table tell them, Asher Bachar Banu Mikalam. What do those words mean? How lucky we are, how fortunate we are that the Rabbeinu Shalom chose us and made us different than every other nation of the world. And Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvaysav. How we are sanctified. We're not like everybody else. When we do a mitzvah, it changes us. It elevates us. And that sets the tone for all the mitzvahs that we're going to do by the Seder. There's also, I saw beautiful brought down in the Minchas Asher Hagadah from my cousin Rav Asher Weiss in Eretz Yisrael. He brings down in his Hagadah a beautiful vart. He brings it from, I wrote down here, one second. Oh, it's from the Divrei Chaim. From the Divrei Chaim from Tzanz. He brings down, the Divrei Chaim said, that when we say in Kiddush by the Seder, Mikra Kadesh, Zecher Liyetzias Mitzrayim, that the Yom Tov of Pesach is a Mikra Kadesh. It's a convocation. We announce a convocation. We all get together to celebrate Yom Tov, and it's Zecher Liyetzias Mitzrayim. It's a Zecher, a remembrance to the Exodus from Mitzrayim. He says that call of Kiddush, that announcement by Kiddush, should serve as a tremendous inspiration to every one of us to be Mekadesh ourselves, to work on ourselves, and to elevate ourselves. Why? He says something so beautiful. He says we have to realize that when we look at Yetzias Mitzrayim, we're celebrating Klal Yisrael coming out of Mem Tes Sharei Tumah. We say that the Klal Yisrael at the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim, the people weren't on a very high madrega. Quite the opposite. They were on a very low madrega. The Malachim by the Yam Suf, the angels were saying, they were asking Hashem, why is it that you're drowning the Mitzrim and you're saving the Yidden? There doesn't seem to be a great difference between the Mitzrim and the Yidden. Halalu oiv de avodah zarah, v'halalu oiv de avodah zarah. They said the Mitzrim worship avodah zarah, and unfortunately the Yidden at that time, some of them also worshipped avodah zarah. So why is it that they get drowned and they get saved? So it seems that the Yidden at the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim, they weren't on such a high madrega. Yet, by the time that they actually went through the Yam Suf, it says, the woman who was a shivcha, a maidservant, she was able to witness and she was able to see the Maaseh HaMarkava, the workings of heaven in a clearer way than the Navi Yecheskel ben Buzi. So somehow they went from being on such a low madrega, they went up to the heights of heights until they were able to go to Har Sinai and be Makabel the Torah by Har Sinai and witness the revelation at Har Sinai. The Divrei Chaim says that should serve as a tremendous inspiration for us. If that's what the generation of Yetzias Mitzrayim was able to accomplish, imagine what we could accomplish. We have the Torah already. Look at all the spiritual riches that we have. We have the Torah. We have davening. We have Taryag mitzvahs. Look at the history, the rich history that we have. Look at the Sfarim Shragen that we have, with hundreds and hundreds of Sfarim. And we have Talmud Bavli and Talmud Yerushalmi, and we have Shulchan Aruch, and we have Sifrei Musar, and we have Sifrei Chazal. We have so much. If the Dar of Yetzias Mitzrayim was able to elevate themselves from Memtesh Shari Tumah until being able to come to Har Sinai, imagine what we could do if we would seriously sit down and seriously put ourselves to the task and seriously work. Imagine the heights that we could reach. So when we hear Kaddish by the Seder, and we're sitting by the Seder with all of the opportunities that we have by the Seder. I saw a vart. What does it say? It says by the Seder. Oh, I'm forgetting now. It says. Oh, I know. There's a beautiful Alshich. The Alshich, I wasn't even going to go into this. The Alshich says that Kadesh Orchatz Karpas Yachatz is not only the simonim for the Seder. Kadesh Orchatz Karpas Yachatz is an instruction list of how to elevate yourself. It's kind of like the Mesilas Yesharim. The Mesilas Yesharim gives you the steps of how to work on yourselves, the rungs of the ladder, how to get all the way up to Ruach HaKodesh. You start with Zehirus, and then you go to Zrizus, and then you go to Precious. So he gives you the rungs of the ladder. The Alshich says that Kadesh Orchatz Karpas Yachatz are also the rungs of the ladder. He says Kadesh is you have to sanctify yourself. He says, how do you sanctify yourself? You sanctify yourself by staying away from Moisaros. Staying away, don't involve yourself in too much physicality. Lessen the pleasures of Olam Hazeh. Be Mekadesh yourself. Then you go to the next step, which is Orchatz. Orchatz, you have to cleanse yourself of anything that you might have, of any Averis that you might have. So they bring down, they say, it seems to be backwards. You would think that first would come Orchatz. First, cleanse yourself from any Averis that you have. After you cleanse yourself from Averis, then you could go to Kadesh. Then you could sanctify yourself. So it should be Orchatz Kadesh, not Kadesh Orchatz. So they answer that yes, the whole year round, first you need Orchatz and then you need Kadesh. But not by the Seder night. By the Seder night, the Rabbeinu Shalom is waiting for you. The Rabbeinu Shalom is here to assist you in being Mekadesh yourself. And therefore you could jump straight away to Kaddish. Right away you could sanctify yourself, even while you still maybe have Averis that you have to work on. Because the Rabbeinu Shalom is here to work with you. So on the Seder night, when we have the Rabbeinu Shalom, Mamish helping us, Mamish working with us, when we hear Kiddush and we hear Zecher Yetzias Mitzrayim, again, that's a call to action. If the Yidden in the Dor of Yetzias Mitzrayim were able to reach such heights, we, for sure, should be able to reach tremendous heights. Now, Orchatz. I think we have time for one more. Orchatz. What's Orchatz? We wash without a bracha over the karpas. All right. Why do we wash for karpas? So the truth is, I think a lot of people don't even have a basic understanding of why we wash on lechem. Why do we wash for bread? Why is it that when we eat a meal with bread or with matzah on Pesach, why do we have to wash? What does washing your hands have to do with bread? And the simple answer is that it's a takanas chachamim. It's a decree of the rabbis that we should wash before we eat a suda with bread. Mishum srach truma, because we're afraid of truma becoming ruined. What does that mean? Well, we know that one of the mitzvahs that we have is that you have a farmer who grows crops. He has to separate trumas and maasros from his crops. And the very first thing he has to separate is he has to take a portion of his crop and he has to give it to the kohen. That's one of the matnas kahuna. That's a gift that goes to the kohen. So he has to give his truma to the kohen. Now, only a kohen is allowed to eat truma. A non-kohen is not allowed to eat truma. And the kohen who eats truma has to eat the truma while he's tahor. He has to be pure. He has to be ritually clean. He can't be tameh. So a kohen is not allowed to eat truma betuma. He has to be tahor. And the truma has to be kept in a state of tahara. You're not allowed to bring tuma to truma. You have to keep truma tahor. Now, there's the laws of tuma and tahara are very complex, but one of the dinei derabanan of tuma is that stam yodayim, your hands, are always considered to be what's called a sheni l'tuma. They're always considered to have a second degree of tuma. Now, I'm not going to get all complex here and go into all the laws of tuma and tahara, but suffice it to say that if the default position is that a person's hands have on them second degree tuma, then the halacha is if a person touches truma with his hands without washing them first, he ruins the truma. He makes the truma tamei. So the Chachamim said, you have to wash your hands whenever you're going to handle truma. You must wash your hands. Now, a kohen, when a kohen sits down to eat a meal, the assumption is that whatever challah he has, whatever bread a kohen has, we assume is going to be truma, because that's where a kohen gets his flour from. A kohen gets his flour from truma. So therefore it became necessary to tell kohanim that kohanim should always wash their hands before handling their grain or their bread. So a kohen always has to wash before he eats bread. Once it became the practice that kohanim always have to wash before eating bread, the Chachamim passed on that practice to the whole Klal Yisrael. That way, since now every Yid washes before he eats bread, so then the kohanim will, of course, always wash before they eat bread. Now, we don't have truma nowadays, and we're all tamei. No matter what we do, we're all tamei. There's no way, by washing our hands, we don't make our hands non-tamei. We're all tamei meis. So we're all tamei no matter what we do with our hands. So why do we wash our hands nowadays? So the lashon of the Mishnah Berurah says like this. He says, V'gam achshav, even now, she'ein kohanim oichlin truma b'pnei atuma, where kohanim cannot eat truma because they're tamei, and we're always tamei no matter what we do, loi batla takana zu. This decree of the Chachamim to wash before eating bread was not nullified. It wasn't taken away. Why? Kadesh sheyiu regilim b'nei Yisrael, so that the b'nei Yisrael should be accustomed. Kisheyibane Beis Hamikdash b'mehera v'yameinu, that when the Beis Hamikdash is rebuilt speedily in our days, lechal b'tahara, people will be used to eating in a state of tahara, so that they should not chas v'shalom bring tuma into truma. V'oid tam l'takanas netila, and the Mishnah Berurah said nikius ukedusha, because the pasuk says v'his kaddishtem v'yisem kedoshim. A yid is supposed to be kadosh, and therefore a yid does not eat the way a non-Jew eats. A non-Jew could just go ahead and eat with his bare hands, with his dirty hands. It doesn't matter. A Yid has to wash his hands before he goes to eat, because we are Kedoshim. What do you see from this Mishnah Berurah? What do you see from this whole lesson in halacha? What we see from here, Rabbi is, and you should understand that the halacha of washing over a vegetable that's dunked in water is based on the same halacha as washing over bread. If we wash over bread because of srach truma, the halacha of washing over a vegetable dipped in a liquid is also mishum srach truma. Now the Mishnah Berurah himself says most of us don't have the custom throughout the year to wash when we dip a vegetable in a liquid. But by the Seder night, we do it. The Mishnah Berurah says really we should do it all year round. But for certain, by the Seder night, we do it. Before we dunk the karpas in the liquid, we wash our hands. But that orchatz, that washing, realize what it's based on. It's based on the halachas of tumah and tahara. It's based on a whole body of halacha that we have almost no involvement in nowadays because we don't have a Beis HaMikdash. But by the Seder night, when we are celebrating Geula, when we're celebrating Me'avdus Lecherus, Orchatz, we go ahead and we wash. Why? Because Mehera Yibane HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash should be rebuilt speedily. And you know what we're doing? We're showing the Rabbeinu Shalom. Rabbeinu Shalom, we want to live with the halachas of Tumah and Tahara. How many times have I said by these shiurim, people say they want Mashiach to come. Why do you want Mashiach to come? You want Mashiach to come so you shouldn't have any tzaros? You want Mashiach to come so COVID-19 should go away? You want Mashiach to come so Biden should go away? You want Mashiach to come so that Iran should go away? You want Mashiach to come so the PLO should go away? You want Mashiach to come so you should have Parnasa easy? That's why you want the Beis HaMikdash? If that's why you want the Beis HaMikdash, that's shvach. I don't know if the Rebbeinu Shalom is ready to bring Mashiach for that. You have to want Mashiach to come because you want to be able to live like a Yid the way a Yid is supposed to live. You want Mashiach to come because you want to be able to bring a carbon if you have a carbon. You want Mashiach to come because you want to know that if Chas v'Chalila, you're Machal Shabbos b'Shoigig, you want to know that you could bring a carbon chatas and you could get kapar. Now, if Chas v'Chalila, you're Machal Shabbos b'Shoigig, what are you going to do? You can't bring a carbon, but the Torah Kaddish says you got to bring a chatas. You chayav a chatas. But you can't bring one. So what are you going to do? So you daven. You ask the Rebbeinu Shalom to give you kapara. But I don't want that. I want to be able to bring a carbon. I want to be able to give truma to a kayin. I want to be able to give meiser. I want to be able to keep all of the halachas of tumah and tahara. I want to be able to keep all the halachas of kachim. That's why you want Mashiach to come. Because you want to live a Torah life the way a Torah life is described in the Torah Kaddish, with all the Taryag mitzvahs. For that, the Rebbeinu Shalom will bring Mashiach. So when we call out Orchatz by the Seder, realize what we're calling out. We're not just saying, no, wash your hands and don't make a bracha. No, we're calling out Orchatz. Orchatz, Mehera Yibana HaMikdash, Tumah and Tahara. That's what we're calling out Orchatz. So here you see tonight, just the first two steps of the Seder, Kadesh, Orchatz. You see what lies behind everything, how much depth there is, and how much there is to learn from every step and every word and every phrase in the Hagadah. So exactly how far into the Hagadah we'll get in the time that we have between now and Pesach, we'll see. But I hope that by doing this, it'll bring some meaning into the starim, and people will have that Hagadah in front of them by the Seder, and they'll really have what to think about and what to give over. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah, and the schus of the limud HaTorah should be a schus. The Rebbeinu Shalom should send Yeshuas and Refuas and Parnasa to all those in need. I want to specifically mention Shlomo Zalman, Why am I so bad at remembering these names? Shlomo Zalman. I have it written down here somewhere. Okay, I remember it. Shlomo Zalman ben Mesha and Yisrael Tzvi ben Ruchama Edel Roiza. They should have a refuah shalema b'sayr shar chel Yisrael. Everyone, the Rabban Shem should send refuahs, Yeshuas, and Parnasa. The Rabban Shem should protect everybody in Klal Yisrael. And we're coming to Nisan. We're coming to the Zman of Geula. I remember when Rav Moshe. I don't remember at this point if it was Rosh Chodesh Nisan or it was Rosh Chodesh Iyar. Thinking that it was Rosh Chodesh Iyar, and the Rishiva Zatzal gave a krechts, and he said Nocha Nisan is avek, another Nisan is gone, and Moshiach is Nach Nishdu. It says Nisan is the Zman Geula, so we should be Zaycha finally to the Bias Gal Tzedek B'Meher V'Yameinu. The Rabban Shem should finally send the Geula Shlema. It's good to see everyone. I think you're unmuted. You're unmuted. So if you want to say something, you can.